Guys, we're back. We're going to do texturing this time, and I'm going to try to speed up the pace a little because the last video dragged on forever. All right, here we go. We're using the same level that I made for the first tutorial video. You can see the textures here. I'm not going to worry about this area because we're going to show the texture list and use this a lot. All right. Ignore this test button. Why is that there? I don't know. So let's put a default texture on this. Let's use different textures than last time. Here we go. All right. Nice blank texture on everything. Oh, I forgot. Shift space. There we go. All right. So the first thing we want to do, default mapping, Control T. You can't see it do anything here, but let's apply it. And let's say your textures are all messed up, and you hit Control T. There you go. That sets the default mapping. It's sort of just generally good default, but for nice boxy texture, like boxy geometry like this, it works fine. When we actually want to line stuff up, though, let's see something that looks like it needs to line up. Let's go with that. And it's still generally fine. But we're still going to do some texturing alignment on this stuff. Look at that. Look at that seam. It's awful. We got to fix that. All right, let's start here. Floors. Why am I not pushing Shift Q? There we go. All those floors are going to have the same texture. We're going to make it stone floor. There it is. Okay, so now we've got a problem. This does not line up. Let's get rid of that wires. So what we want to do, let's select that face, do quarter snap. Now it lines up. And then here we're going to switch the texture to stone 4B. And it doesn't line up either, but we can do some tricks. First, we could select this and do Shift T. Will this line up? I'm not sure. We're going to try it anyway. It does. Okay. Let's pretend that it didn't. Default map. Bring it back. Okay. So now we're going to select that. We can move that, but we don't want to do that. We're going to move it around. I'm using the arrow keys right here. You can also use Shift plus the numpad, which I generally do more of. Okay, so let's say we need to rotate this texture. Which do we do? I'm doing Control Shift or just Control and number keys or arrow keys. That rotates in 45-degree increments. We can do smaller increments with Alt. The move less. All right, so got it moved, and now we want to line it up. We're doing Shift and left and right and up and down. It's all relative to the texture's orientation. And then let's say I want to align this so it aligns with this texture. I mark the texture I want to do the aligning on. Then the base texture, or the base side, I select that one and then I hit Shift T, which is the same as align to selected. This is a very important thing. You'll do Shift T a lot. All right, so now we've got that. It lines up. It looks nice here. Down here, we're gonna hit Q. I'll select them all. Do quarter snap. Nice. Same thing here. Q. Quarter snap. All right, because this geometry is all pretty square, this is not terribly hard. We'll do some more tricky geometry in a minute. All right, so let's change this texture and that one and that one and that and that. Let's do a nice texture that goes up and down like this one. Again, Shift T lines it up. Notice how these were aligned by default, but this did actually shift a little bit. That happens quite often. Now I know I want to change this. I'm going to hit Q because I know it's only connected to those three faces. Let's choose that texture, apply. Now, one important thing, which I'm not going to care about at this level, but is important for speed in general, is the fewer textures you use, the faster your level will render. That's just a general case thing. Try not to use too many textures. If you use every texture in the game, it's going to run slow. Yeah, so you can use lots of textures, but you just got to be careful about your frame rate. Or if you don't care about frame rate, then go crazy. It's fine. All right. So what I'm going to do here is select those, use a different texture. Let's go with that one. With those, I don't actually need to line them up because if they're on a 4x4 spacing, it's just going to line up automatically. All right, so another thing we're going to do, we select a side, we mark it, and then we hit X to cycle through the sides and mark the other side. Alternatively, I could have selected it, marked it with space, rotate it around, and then do it again. But I like to use X because it's often faster, and I think it's easier just to push keys. You know which one you're going to be pushing a lot of. So let's change this. Say we want that texture. It's there. Texture goes there. Easy. Okay. Let's use a few different textures up here. That one looks good. For some reason we want to use that texture. Actually looks alright like that. Let's use something that it's a little bit off. That one doesn't quite line up, which is fine. Still do quarter snap or 8 snap. That one too many. Okay. That's a shift Q to select all the flat faces. But sometimes it gets stuff you don't want. Deselect it or reduce our tolerance so it stops doing that. Let's go with this texture again. Apply it. Texturing is generally pretty fast. The slow part of making these levels is choosing the decals and stuff, but we'll get to the decals in a little bit. I just want to get a nice base texture for all these. The texture has no seams. It's always nice to use. Could have lined it up because one of those is going to be off. It uses the top left corner when it decides to do the default mapping. So sometimes stuff will line up like these two top left corners were perfectly aligned because this is a 4x4 segment right there. What I really need are some, need to move some stuff so it gets unaligned. I can show more alignment. Let's move that up. Let's make everything look nice based on that. Goes up, goes up. This is there we go. We're going to leave this down. Okay, so see these two sides? I just want to explain real fast. These sides will get, they're not flat. You can tell they have a little bit of a bend to them. It will always bend so that it gives the most space to the inside of the geometry. That means there's two triangles on this side here, and that side there, and it'll bend inward, or bend outward, I should say, to create the most space. It will not do a cut across this side because that would give less space. So it's always consistent, so you can sort of predict how it'll be. In game, this will look a little bit rough. Not rough, but it'll just look a little bit odd, I would say. So I try to avoid too many of these unless they're sort of symmetrical or that are just in a place that it doesn't matter too much. All right, but let's line up some textures now. All right, so these guys here. Now, select them. Control T is the default, or it's not quite lined up for some reason. Ooh. Select. We're doing Shift T, lines it up. Definitely needs some aligning here. Default, not lining up nicely, so Shift T up. Keep it like that. We could go up. I think we'll do that. That looks fine. This does not. Let's pretend I didn't have that selected. We can do get texture from side, and that gets the texture that's on the current side. Now we can select a different side while still having this one marked. Get it, apply it, and if we're doing apply and we have something selected and something marked, it always chooses marked stuff over selected stuff. So it's a quick way to sort of copy and paste texture. Another thing you can do is default map. Again, marked stuff takes priority over selected stuff. It'll only use selected stuff if you have nothing marked. So now that I have nothing marked, I can move this texture around, holding Alt and Shift, and that lets me move it in a small increment. Say I'm too lazy to figure that out. Default. There we go. So lining textures up is not too hard when you have pretty square geometry. Let's go. Those again. I don't like that. This texture. Now one tricky thing is these textures actually look a lot more like in-game than they do here. This color and that color I think are matched up now. But this is the old version of the texture when we exported it to the editor. But I can move that so the seam lines up nicely. And let's say I want this to use that same texture, and even though it's a little weird, I want it to line up. It is not going to line up by default because it's so much wider in this dimension than that. But if I want to force it to anyway, I will use UV editor. View, UV editor. There it is. The UV editor kind of works similarly. We use left mouse button to mark stuff. There's no, oh, there is selection here. Okay. Mark stuff. By default, it does not use the grid. I just line it up, snap to grid, line these up, snap to grid. The UV editor is doesn't have too many features, but it's useful when you need to do custom alignment for stuff like this. We're not going to go over that in too much detail. All right, so now that looks better. I'm going to leave that the same. That's fine. Not the right ceiling texture. We're going to get texture from side, apply to texture, and now it's right. Now we're going to make this look nice. Do the same thing, get texture from side, apply to textures. We'll use Shift T this time. Force it to line up. And in there, we're going to use that texture. That looks good. Oh, now this looks different than that. So we're going to change all these. All right, so now we're going to select that texture. Now I think it's fine to actually just select one of these. I have all those marked, so now it's going to line up. When I hit Shift T, there we go. All right, so that's the basics of texturing. That went so fast, we're going to skip right on over to what these things are. They're for caves. So we're going to go into caves. So let's make a cave area. I think we're just going to go down here. Caves and textures sort of go together. We're going to make all this side, and even this one that we can't see right now. We're going to set all those to rock wall 1. And we're setting that side, that's invisible because when we insert it, we want it to be a cave. So this is a cave, right? But there's one important setting. Let's select all those. I push Q there, select all the connected faces of the same texture. We need to set the deformation height above 0. If we don't do that, then it's not actually a cave, it'll just be a flat side. Once we set this above 0, it'll smooth these out in game when we convert it. And it'll use some deformation algorithms. I'm going to move this up here. There we go. We're going to put it on top. Because we actually want to see what they do. Okay, so these are the deformation settings essentially. There can be 4 different types of deformation in your level. One thing I did, I set this deformation height. That does not get applied automatically to all your marked faces. You have to copy height to marked. All right. On the other hand, these do get applied automatically. Why we made that work differently, I'm not quite sure, but that's how it works. So that's how you got to use it. All right, so let's say I change this side. Right. And I only want to select the ones that are. And now it didn't mark this side because it doesn't have the same deformation settings as the other ones. And that's what I wanted. All right. So this deformation height is basically how strong this algorithm is. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 algorithms, not including none. You can use none, but you might as well just use a small deformation height instead. It basically costs the same amount of processing time. Yeah, we're going to select all these, give them a nice strong deformation height, copy height to marked. And this is our algorithm. We can make the caves a little bit finer in detail. Usually 8x8 is the default, but we set it to 6x6 just because it's faster to convert. Let's go back to 6x6 so we can actually see how fast it converts. So one other thing, since we're doing texturing, we're going to make this a nice texture that's consistent all the way around. We're going to use that texture. If you're far away, you can scroll, or you can just do get from side. That. All right, I would normally put a decal on here, but we're not covering decals yet. We'll go over that in the next video because those are pretty complex and they need their own video. But caves are pretty simple. Texturing is pretty simple. We will share a video with these two things. All right. One thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to care about the textures on the caves too much. I might use box mapping. But generally the texturing actually doesn't matter in caves because the shader it uses for caves is a triplanar shader which will blend automatically between basically these same mappings, but in game it looks a little bit different. So yeah, you'll see how this looks here. These are all marked as caves. They have deformation height. That's all you have to do to make something a cave. When we get into game, we're going to save this. We're going to convert it. Let's see. Before we convert it, we're going to actually player start point here. There we go. We're going to save it. Quick lesson, generate mission file. We need to export the level first to do that. So, tutorial. That sounds good. The level converted. The more caves you have, the slower the conversion process goes. There's not enough caves here to really slow it down. After we export the level, we're going to create a mission file. It says created a default mission file for you tutorial 1. So now we should be able to start the game and see our level. All right, we're back. We're in the game now. Let's go to play mission. And there's our mission. Good. I'm glad it works because I haven't tested it before. Tutorial 1. Let's load it up. We're going to play rookie. Didn't really matter. There we go. We have a level. It has no lights in it, but we'll turn on our headlights and we can look around. Joystick is in the wrong spot, so we're just going to fly around with the keyboard. And look, there are some caves. They're kind of deformed. They're really small, so it's hard to tell if the deformation is working well. But you can sort of tell that they're a little rougher than you might expect, because they're lower poly than we normally use. But that's good for just sort of roughing things out. And then when you're done, you might want to up it to 8 or 9 meter or breaks per side. That's what the 8x8 and 9x9. That's the grid size that it uses when it does the deformation. But 6x6 is good enough. It'll run twice as fast as 8x8 essentially. Yeah, so we can see that. We got the level in game. We need to put some lights, but the lights usually come from decals or entities. But for now, we can just use the headlight. And yeah, everything's working well. So we're going to go over caves just a little bit more, give some quick tips about how to make those look a little nicer, and go from there. Game. All right, we're back in the editor. So we're going to quickly create a few caves. A nice little entrance room there. So what I generally do is I sort of rough out the caves real fast, and then I smooth them out later. Because you actually want your caves to be kind of smooth looking in the editor, and they'll look even smoother and nicer and more natural in the game. Extend that side. The segments don't have to be the default any particular size, but you want to keep them kind of consistent because that'll help the geometry size stay consistent as well, and it'll just look better overall. So you don't want like huge cave parts and really tiny cave parts all in the same area, because it'll still split it up to an 8x8 grid or a 6x6 grid, whatever the setting is up here, no matter what the size of the segment. All right, so that's our cave area. Let's add some lava to the bottom. Go back to the textures. Lava is in the middle, I know. There we go. With the lava, you want to use map Y, because it doesn't have a different shader by default. It actually wants you to use map Y. You can use the default map, but I would say map Y is more consistent, and all the lava is always facing straight up, and at least in the levels that I do. You can do what you want though. All right, let's make this cave look more natural. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna close this, and we want to only show the cave segments. So we're gonna go to segment mode, mark all those segments, go up to edit, hide unmarked segments. Now we only see the cave segments. The other ones we can get back by doing unhide hidden segments. But it doesn't remember which ones you hid. So you have to remark them. Here we go. We're gonna just look more natural. First thing we want to do, just round it out. I'm gonna use Shift and right mouse button, a little smoother. Angle. You can do this from any angle. You can use a 3D view. We'll turn back on wire text. There we go. That helps figure out where the vertices are. I'm just selecting these vertices, or marking them, I should say, and then moving them, and then let's see. You want a little bit of irregularity in these as well. Let's go. You can tell how many marked vertices you have up here, which is kind of good when you're doing caves, because sometimes you might get more vertices than you actually wanted. We'll go back and fix that texture after we're done. We want to widen base out a little bit. So let's select. I'll select these and then mark them with the space bar. And then I'm going to use Control Shift right mouse button and scale. and that's a good way to modify your caves. This looks like it's too close. Move out. You don't have to keep your faces so that they're, you know, totally planar, but you want them so they're kind of planar so they break up nicely. Looks like we need to move this up. Natural. We're kind of just rounding this whole thing out. Back here, it's too straight. Let's get that. Now you can use the sort of contrast of things like this to create a ridge in your cave, but generally there'll be enough ridges automatically just from the borders and the corners of these things. So only do that when you really know what you're doing. You want a ridge on purpose. All right, that needs to be wider. Just a little bit up, a little bit down. I think this segment is unnecessary. Let's delete it. Now, one thing we can do is we actually want to make sure all these segments have deformation height, because the ones that were not, it's hard to explain, but basically sides that are not there have no deformation. See, this one has 0. So if we extruded this face, insert there, this will have 0. Yep, there we go. Okay, so that's why we did that. We wanted to make sure all these have a deformation height. Now, one other thing you might want to do is on really harsh corners, you may want to reduce the deformation height, and then you may also want to do that where you're transitioning from man-made to non-man-made areas. So we're going to select all those, go down to like 0.5, copy height to marked. Now if I want to change that again, mark the height. If I want to change everything else, mark the height. Select the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, that looks like a more natural area. And then let's do tunnel builder one more time just so you get used to that. That is way too many segments. Let's say we're going down. All right, so we're going to make sort of an arc that goes down. Actually, we'll go to the left. There we go. Bam. All right, and then we'll take that and make it, mess it up a little bit. So, most caves aren't real nice, perfect areas like that. And delete a couple segments and make sure those all right, that's a nice little extra area on our cave. All right, and then the lava. Let's go back to the lava. You don't want deformation height that high. You just want, you don't even need to set it because by default the lava texture will get set to like 0.5 or something, like 0.05. We're just going to set it anyway to make sure it's not set too high. Set map Y. Save this. Now saving it won't change it in the game. What you have to do, come up here, export. We've already created the mission file. We don't have to do that again. But we need to export the level. This will take a little bit longer. Doing the cave stuff, thinking about it. All right, it's done. So it took a few seconds for this many segments. It doesn't matter that the other stuff is hidden, but we're going to unhide it now. All right, we're going to save that. Let's go into the game and see how it looks. All right, back in the game. YouTube tutorial. Insane, doesn't matter. We're crazy. This part's the same. That should be. All right, that's just one of the cave algorithms. Hold on, we do actually want to look at this. When you use strong values on hard corners, you can get that, and I will reduce that and change the algorithm and get a finer detail. We're going to re-export this, and I'm going to change my pilot next time so I don't have to use this control setup. I don't know if you guys can see that on the YouTube video, but that actually affects a little bit of light from the reflection probes from there. That reminds me we need to show a little bit of light, so we're going to do one light in here just to show that they work. Show a couple different ways of doing light real fast. All right. Do this real fast because this video is getting long. Let's go here. What we're going to do is increase that. Go to H ridges, one of my favorites. This is the area that had the problem, but we're going to change all these because those are hard corners. It's too much deformation for that to handle. I'm going to reduce that, copy height to marked. That's good. Come in here. We're going to place light. Decide. There we go. Quick entity editing. That's too bright. Just want it to be large. No shadow light. That needs to be red, which means saturation 0.95. To 0.05. All these values are 0 to 1, and it just converts it to create a color here. We'll go over that more later. Then we'll show one quick light decal. And here just you guys see what I'm doing? That's a nice bright light. Here we go. One there. And we'll copy it here too. All right, we'll go over that stuff in more detail another time, but I just want to show we convert that things have changed. All right, export. This will take a couple seconds longer probably because we upped our grid size. We're going to fast forward and jump right into the game. All right, we are back in the game. Let's change our pilot to keyboard mouse. Mission 1. Any doesn't matter. There we go. Those lights are creating light. It's our point light with no shadows. Decent. You can do all sorts of fine tuning on the lights and stuff like that. It's kind of an art form to learn how to do good lighting, but yeah, we have enough tools that the lack of global illumination lighting and custom levels is not a big deal. Here. I think we'll have to reduce that part a little more. It's still got a pinch there. That part looks fine. This algorithm, the H ridges, it's a little bit meant for larger caves, but you sort of see generates is in a horizontal pattern. Not all of the algorithms generate stuff that looks like their name. Come up with descriptions for all those and put those in the manual somewhere. So there we go. That is caves and texturing, and we'll see you guys next time.